Parents forced me to give my $5,000 inheritance to my sister for her business. Then she sends me pics from her launch party to rub it in my face, so I decided to take revenge. I, 17F, was forced to give away the money that I had inherited from my grandmother a couple of months ago to my older sister, so she could fund her business dreams. My older sister, Connie, is 6 years older than me and has always bullied me because she just seems to have something against me for no reason. The truth of the matter is that she bullies me because she can. She knows that she will get away with it, like she always has, right from our childhood. My parents already told me not to make a big deal out of things, and whenever I would complain to them about Connie and her behavior towards me, they would tell me that I was being sensitive. It was now that I realized it was just my parents gaslighting me into believing that this was normal behavior by older siblings, and I have nothing to be upset about. But I can tell you guys for a fact that Connie was much worse than other older siblings because she was not messing around with me, and what she did to me was not harmless. Obviously, when we were very little, there was always her trying to put me down with her harsh words, and my parents telling me to shut up but never saying anything to her even though it was she who was making me cry. That was horrible in itself, but at least it was just verbal. But this particular incident that took place when I was 13 was what made me realize that she didn't just dislike me, she actually loved me. So my family and I had driven to the beach, and Connie had brought along a couple of her friends with her. She was 19 at the time and had come back from college for the weekend, so she and her friends were spending all their time together, and things had been particularly nasty for me because, for some reason, her friends seemed to hate me just as much as she did. I guess they were all suffering from the same kind of mental disorder that made them hate people who had done absolutely nothing to them. Anyway, they had constantly been putting me down, making cutting remarks about me and just giggling every time I was around. I had gotten sick of it, so I decided to take a break from them and was just sitting by myself alone on the pier with my feet dangling over the water. And then, all of a sudden, I felt a plastic bag being shoved over my head and somebody kicked me in the back, so I fell into the water. It took me a good couple of minutes to come to my senses and realize what was going on, and then I saw my sister and her friends running away laughing while I splashed around in the water. Thankfully, I'm a good swimmer, and as soon as I recovered from the shock of it all, I took the plastic bag off my head and swam back to the shore as fast as I could. It was the most troubling incident that has ever taken place with me, and when I got back to my parents and started crying about what had happened, my sister and her friends tried to pass it off as a harmless prank, but the worst was yet to come. My parents actually laughed along with them and said that I was just overreacting since I always had been a crybaby. They said that nothing would have happened to me, and my dad even made a joke about all those swimming lessons having finally paid off. The plastic bag that they had put over my head was pretty small, and I might have asphyxiated and died. Also, if I hadn't managed to come to my senses in time and taken that bag off my head, there was a chance that I might have drowned. So many things could have gone wrong, and yet, they seemed to find it all very funny. I already knew that my parents had a favorite daughter, and it's definitely not me, but that incident remained with me, and after that, I made up my mind that I was not going to treat any of these people like my family. My only goal was to study hard, get into a college, and then get away from these people because I absolutely could not afford to trust any of them. Since then, I have always maintained my distance from Connie, but unfortunately, I'm forced to live with my parents, so I can't exactly treat them the same way. I have had to act nice with them, and that was also part of the reason why I had to give away the money that I had inherited 3 months ago, even though I really didn't want to. My grandmother, who was my dad's mother, passed away about a year ago, and we finally received the inheritance 3 months ago. She left the house that she used to live in and most of the money that she had left to my parents, while Connie and I received $5,000 each, but I also received a sapphire ring that she owned since I had once told her that I really liked it, and she had joked about how I could have it once she was gone. It was a pretty big amount and I planned on saving it for my future, but then, my parents told me that Connie was starting her own business, so she needed to put together all the money that she possibly could. They were already helping her, and now, they were counting on me to do the same. I did not think that it was fair because it was her business, so why should I have to contribute? Also, let's not forget that she has always treated me with nothing but cruelty my entire life, and now, I was suddenly expected to help out this person. I refused, but after arguing with me for a couple of days, my dad told me that if I did not help her out, then he would not pay for my college tuition and wouldn't even allow me to come back home once I left. That scared me, and I was already very frustrated with the situation, so I ended up saying yes. It was probably not a good decision to make, but I was under a lot of pressure and I just didn't think it was worth it to keep fighting with these people because I had my finals coming up and I had to study as well. So I needed some peace and quiet, which is why, just to shut my parents up, I agreed to give up the inheritance that I had received. After all, they were allowing me to keep my ring. Probably because they did not know that it was a real sapphire, since in the will, my grandmother had only mentioned it as the ring with a blue stone, so I knew what she was talking about, and I was smart enough to keep my mouth shut since it was worth quite a lot, which turned out to be good for me. So I gave up the $5,000 that I had received from my grandmother and put an end to that argument. 3 months have passed since then and I've been accepted to a college of my choice. I'm going to start in a couple of weeks. My parents are living up to the promise that they had made to me. They are going to bear all my expenses, like my tuition, and because I'm going to be living out of state, they're going to pay for all my expenses as well. I guess it was not that bad of an investment after all, to give up my 5 grand because now I don't have to worry about what I'm going to do about money when I'm in college. Everything has been going well for me and technically, it still is, but I feel very guilty about what I did because a couple of days back, my sister hosted a launch party since she has finally managed to open her store. She's working with the same people who she was friends with back in college, you know, the girls who pushed me into the sea with a plastic bag on my head and thought that it was hilarious. The 3 of them now own a massive shoes and accessories store and it's pretty basic stuff, but they think that they did something revolutionary since they believe that whatever they have come up with are really cute things. Anyway, do you have a lot of men to agree with whatever they say? So their cronies are definitely going to be shopping from there and I already know it? There was a chance that my sister could have had a successful career ahead of her, but I kind of did something after she sent me a bunch of photos from the launch party to rub it in my face. I was obviously not invited to the event and when my parents left, they told me that the reason I was not invited was because it was an adults-only event, and since I was 17, they couldn't take me with them. It was a bunch of baloney, but I really didn't want to go anywhere. However, the day after the party, Connie sent me a bunch of photos and a text saying that since I had missed the fabulous party that she had hosted yesterday, she wanted me to live it through the photos. And then, just to be cocky, she said that she couldn't have done this without my help, referring to the 5 grand that I'd had to give up for her. I don't know why, it just got on my nerves and then when I saw this guy who was in the photos, I immediately went to my gallery and confirmed my doubts. From the photos themselves, I could not tell if they were dating anymore or not since he was only in the background of a couple of pictures, but even though he had grown out some stubble and put on some weight, I could still tell that it was her high school ex-boyfriend. This guy, let's call him Simon, started dating her as soon as she turned 18 even though he himself was 25 at the time. He was from the same high school as the 2 of us but of course, he had graduated way before Connie. They had struck up a friendship online when she was 16. He literally asked her out on the day of her 18th birthday, which I thought was pretty creepy, but Connie thought that it was romantic and thankfully, this was the time my parents acted like normal human beings and told her that they did not like the idea of her going out with somebody who had been waiting for her to turn 18 in spite of being in his 20s like a creep. They did not want her to go out with him, but I guess she did not obey them and continued to date him secretly. He was working in his dad's company at the time but after a mere 8 months of being together, they had to break up because he was leaving to live with his uncle in Wyoming and work on the farm since apparently, his father had caught him trying to steal from the company. She was devastated, and that was when our parents found out that she was still with him since she had come back home to beg my dad to get a job here so he wouldn't have to do what his parents asked of him and allow himself to get shipped off to Wyoming and break things off with her. But my dad did not listen to her and forced her to block him everywhere and promise him that she would never speak to him again. Our house had been turned upside down that day because on one hand, Connie was begging our parents not to make her break up with him and promising them that he would be better, and on the other, my dad was yelling at her for not listening to them and getting involved with this guy who was clearly up to no good while my mother just kept crying. Obviously, nobody involved me in anything that day and I was told to stay in my room and not come out, but I had heard his name being thrown around a lot, so I decided to stalk him on social media and when someone causes an uproar like that in your home, you don't forget their face that easily. So when I recognized him, lurking in the background of her photos, I instantly decided to get back at Connie. Because Connie and my parents didn't count me as part of the family, they had been pretty open while discussing the business around me. So I was also aware of the fact that while my own parents didn't need much convincing, her friends' parents hadn't been that easy to crack. They were mostly convincing their parents to invest in the business because I think finding other investors would prove to be a difficult task since all of them are so stupid and incompetent. But anyway, I knew for a fact that the last person who had been holding out on this business plan was one of her mother who was a single parent and was skeptical about betting so much money on a store, dedicated to nothing but shoes and accessories. She wanted her daughter to find a job, work for a couple of years, gain some experience, and then circle back to this so that she wouldn't end up in a bad investment situation, but Connie and her friends were determined to make this work. So Connie had been complaining about this woman a lot while she was at home and ultimately, they had decided that they were going to make do with the money that they had for now, and later on if their business started taking off then their third friend's mother would also invest in the business. That was the deal that they had come up with and for that, they had to make sure that the first few months of their business were a huge success since at the moment, they only had enough capital to go on for a couple of months, but after that, they would definitely need a second round of investment unless, by some miracle, they were able to do enough business to keep up on their own. But realistically, it was unlikely for a business model like to break even so early, especially when they were so small scale and the fashion market is not exactly easy to crack. I knew that the last parent who has been holding out even now needed just one excuse to back out of this deal and I knew that this secret could do it. So I reached out to her through a fake account and asked her to call me because I had something important to share with her regarding her daughter's business. I made sure she called me using the Facebook call feature and didn't give her my number since I wanted to remain anonymous. I had to wait for a couple of hours, probably because she was not sure if this was legit or not, but I guess curiosity got the better of her and she eventually called me up. Then, I told her all about what I had seen, and who the guy lurking in the background of all the photos actually was. She did not believe me initially, But then I was able to manage to tell her that my job was just to warn her. After this, it was entirely up to her whether she still wanted to invest in this business or not. Then I hung up on my own, sent her a couple of pictures of Connie and Simon from the past, and left it up to her to decide. I guess she decided to back out of it and even told her daughter to do the same because, since the day after I made that phone call, things have been intense. Nobody has any idea that I was behind all of this, but Connie has been calling our parents to try and get them to talk to the mother who backed out and convinced her to come back on board. Her friends are also pretty pissed at her because they can't believe that she didn't share something like this with them, and apparently she's back together with Simon, but she had lied about his identity so that nobody would recognize him. And even our parents are pretty displeased with her for this. To sum it up, she's screwed because literally everyone in her life is mad at her, and I really want to enjoy all of this, but for some reason, I just can't bring myself to do that. I know that this business meant a great deal to her, and now, I'm wondering if I was a little too petty and what I did might have been wrong. I overheard our parents discussing how disappointed they were a couple of hours ago, and even they were pissed at her and were considering exiting her business as investors because she had broken their trust. Then it really spelled trouble for her because they almost never get upset with her, so this is something extremely new. And I don't know, this just doesn't feel as good as I thought it would. So Ida for screwing over my sister by trying to get a potential investor to back out of her business because she bullied me as a kid. Update 1. Hey, thanks to everyone who bothered to respond to my post with their advice. I guess you guys are right, I might have had too much of a conscience to enjoy this, but I am doing the wise thing and keeping my mouth shut about what I did. Because if my parents ever found out that it was me behind all of this, they would literally throw me out of the house. And since I'm gonna turn 18 in a couple of months, there's going to be nothing stopping them from doing that either. I'm relying on them to pay for my college expenses, so I really can't afford for that to happen. It's been a week since I made my post, and things have gotten much worse for Connie because the mother who had backed out of the deal convinced her daughter to do the same, and now it's just down to the two of them. But this other friend of hers is very upset with her and is demanding that they split the shares of the business 60-40 because her trust in Connie has greatly diminished after she found out about this secret boyfriend who stole from his father's company. To them, she had introduced Simon as this guy she had met on a dating app a couple of months back and had been with him ever since. But after her friend's mom revealed the truth, she was still trying to stick to that story, but nobody believed her anymore. She even tried to pass off the images as fake, saying that somebody might have photoshopped it to make her look like a liar. So she has been visiting our parents almost every single day, and they have been scolding her for what she did, but also are still trying to help her. Every evening, the three of them get together with their lawyer to try and figure out a way that she wouldn't end up losing her shares of the business. There is a pretty strong chance that they might have to shut down because of this disagreement if they are not able to resolve this conflict quickly, and I don't know how I will feel about that, but honestly, I've just made up my mind to avoid thinking about this at all. The only good thing that has come out of the situation is the fact that because Connie is in trouble, nobody really pays attention to me anymore, so I can come and go as I please, and I'm literally doing whatever I want. It is nice, it has really taken the spotlight off of me, and even when Connie visits, she just ignores me because she's too busy with her own situation, and my parents don't say anything to me either. So this is how I'm spending the last couple of weeks back at home before I leave for college, and it's been great so far. I don't have to answer to anybody about what I do throughout the day, and honestly I feel like even if I don't come back home for a couple of days and end up spending more time at my friend's place than at my own home, my parents and Connie are not even going to notice. Anyway, like I said, this is the one good thing that has come out of the situation, and I'm hoping that they leave me alone until I'm finally ready to go to college. I'm also keeping my fingers crossed that this situation, in no way, impacts my parents' decision to pay for my college expenses. Something that I hadn't considered earlier, but while typing out this post, it occurred to me. If it does, I'll be screwed, but at least I'll have the satisfaction of knowing that Connie has it worse than me. Update 2. So almost 2 weeks have passed since my original post, and up until last week, nothing had really happened involving me, so I thought I was safe, but I don't think so anymore. Anyway, a couple of days back, I guess the woman whom I had called finally gave into the pressure and told Connie how exactly she had managed to find out about this past connection, and she didn't tell her the whole truth, but she just told Connie that she had received an anonymous phone call and a couple of photos from somebody, which is how she had found out. Connie is no longer bothering to hide the fact that she knew and used to be with him and didn't really end her relationship, because at this point, nobody's really stupid and everybody has figured out that she did not meet him on any dating app and the pictures were real. And after she found out that there was an anonymous phone call involved, she obviously thought of me first. So yesterday, when she visited us, I had the misfortune of being downstairs because I had made plans to hang out with a friend and was just leaving, but then, she stormed into the house and shoved me as hard as she could as soon as she saw me. I lost my balance and my temper and shoved her right back. Then, she grabbed me by the hair and started screaming in my face, saying that she knew it had to be me who had made that phone call and she was going to make sure that I paid the price for doing this. I was panicking, but I couldn't let it show on my face because otherwise, she might have figured out the truth, and I wanted to stick to the fact that it was not me. So I started yelling at her and I said that it wasn't me and that I wouldn't even know whom to talk to because I met her friend's parents only once, when they had all come over for lunch a couple of weeks before they opened the store. Of course, I was lying through my teeth, but I tried to make it sound as believable as I could. After a couple seconds of us screaming at each other, our parents intervened and finally got us to break apart. But then, Connie said that she did not believe a word of what I was saying, and she was sure that it was me who had screwed up her chances of having a career in business and demanded that I allow her and my parents to go through my phone and laptop. I had mentally prepared myself because I knew that this was coming, but I still threw a fit about it because if I just agreed to it, that would seem suspicious. Anyway, I had nothing to be scared of because I had wiped all my devices clean of any evidence that could point towards me being the person who had made that anonymous phone call. Besides, Connie thought that I had made a phone call from my phone number and not a Facebook account that I had created specifically to contact her friend's mom and then deleted it. So she was way off in the first place, and even when she and my parents went through all my accounts on different social media platforms, they were able to find nothing. When she did not find any proof to substantiate her claims that it was me who had told her friends about her past with Simon, she completely freaked out at me and started yelling at me, saying that I had wiped all my devices on purpose, and she knew that it was me. I argued with her, saying that she had lost her mind just because she was going to lose her business, but she had no right to take it out on me. Eventually, things quietened down a bit, and she started crying. I thought I was in the clear, but it was then that my parents chose to talk to me and said that it was true that they couldn't find anything to prove that I was the one who had leaked this information, but nevertheless, they believed Connie because she seemed pretty sure of it, and besides, there was nobody else who could have known about this. Even though they had been at the party and had seen Simon, but hadn't recognized him, so it literally could not have been them, and so, that leaves just me because Connie had sent those pictures with Simon in the background to piss me off, and it was very obvious that I might have retaliated. And then, exactly what I had feared would happen, ended up happening. They told me that, even if they couldn't find any proof, they knew that it was me and were canceling their plan of paying for my college expenses. So now, I was on my own and they did not want any further arguments about this. Then, it was my turn to start screaming and crying, but unfortunately, nobody cared about that since I was not Connie. After about half an hour of begging, screaming, and a lot of tears, and still no response from their end, I finally went back to my room and shut myself in, and started writing this update to distract myself. I still have the sapphire ring that my grandmother had left me and I could sell that, but I'm not sure if it would get me through all 3 years of college. So I'm just considering taking out a student loan and asking somebody from my family to become a cosigner because like I said, there's just a couple of weeks to go until the deadline for making the payment and I absolutely cannot risk anything. Even if I'm able to cover the first semester by selling the ring, I'm not sure about the rest and eventually, I'll have to figure something out. Update 3, hey, so a lot of things have taken place since my last update. It's been a month since I posted and let me just start off by talking about what happened to me. So, I left my parents' place a couple of days after my last update because now, since they were not paying for me to go to college, I did not have any reason to stay with them or keep in touch. I packed my bags and left to go live with a friend of mine. I had already discussed things with her and she told me that I was welcome to come live with her and her family. She was taking a gap year and after living with her for a couple of days, she and her parents told me that she wanted to start working at her dad's business so she really didn't have any interest in going to college in the first place. But her parents did have a college fund set aside for her, so I could use that for the time being. I tried to decline, but they convinced me since her parents had known me for a long time and said that it was as good as sending their own daughter to college. And honestly, I was in no position to say no to an offer like that, so I took them up on it, and even though I am sure that they don't expect me to pay them back, I'm gonna make sure that I do. I am on campus right now and I didn't even have to sell my grandmother's ring, so I'm very grateful to my friend and her parents. And as for Connie, things didn't end too well for her because she ended up selling all the shares of the business and now, her friends own the store entirely. She had to cut her losses and leave because it had been established that nobody could really trust her anymore and unfortunately, my parents couldn't do anything about that since it was completely out of their control. She is probably upset about it because this entire thing was her idea in the first place, but I guess she should be relieved because I don't think the store is going to do well in the future anyway. Anyway, that's none of my business because I have no contact with them anymore. I'm just gonna focus on my future now.